reading the New Testament or whatever it says in the New Testament. So meaning
That's it. I kicked him out.
Not an honest argument.
Hey, why'd you kick him out?
No,
Wow.
because I hate dishonest. I mean,
there's a
that's
big
claim dishonesty.
here. There wasn't an open conversation, and
but he didn't
Courtney,
know.
I never
he didn't know he was
off
doing
or anything like that.
He exactly knew what he was doing. Jews do the same thing. They'll say, of course, all these rabbinic ideas.
Asher, you had more patience with the black Israelites and the Muslims than him.
Yes, no. I know.
Wait. No.
He's right.
That wasn't my show. That wasn't my show.
Oh,
okay?
Good point.
You know, I don't have the patience of someone lying, saying that this is the literal meaning, and I've quoted verses from the Bible to prove it, and you still don't see it. That I can't stand, okay? Because I give them as much courtesy. I'll say for sure, it might be talking about God having 10 heads, and it might be.
That's ridiculous.
Might be. Nobody's saying no. What do you mean? I just quoted the Bible, and you still don't believe it? All he needs, like, those talking points convince only primitive people, and those are not people I want in this chat or as part of my audience. For sure. It might be talking about. I'm not saying that you're wrong. Okay. I mean, it's just this with demagoguery. All I did was quote from the Bible. I just proved my point. It's not true. I'm just telling people, let's discuss the literal meaning of what it says or what it might say, because we don't know. Do we have to have a response for every verse in the Torah? No, we don't. Okay. But does that mean that only the New Testament is the final interpretation of gray area in the Torah? That doesn't mean that either. So that's a dishonesty. He's lying to himself, because in any other area of life, he would be able to make a distinction between what's literal and what's devotional, but now he's telling us what I just quoted you is the only way to read it, and you just don't see it. And then he starts quoting other verses, and he's making a mockery of the Bible. This is not how an academic goes
back from one verse to another verse. He doesn't address this stuff.
Making a mockery of the Bible. You mean the Tanakh that you don't even really think is authoritative in regards
to Torah? I believe is authoritative.
Well, he was quoting a lot of prophets.
I meant Torah. Okay, clearly. Now, if he was a rabbi, I would have kept it on longer, because I could make a clip on.
I feel like there were a lot of good clips there with him.
Whatever. Okay. Okay.
So that we
Asher don't do that no more, y'all.
No, it's because it's gonna convince the wrong people. Because the average person, all they want to hear is, "Oh, what do you mean? All he's been doing is quoting scripture." Oh,
now they could say, "Oh, you kicked him off because he was winning." Like, you could take that angle as well.
That's fine. But less is more. It's better to have him less on here than. I mean, that it's better to. I seem like a Pharisee now, or censoring people.
But I wanted.
I wanted to know what your understanding of Deuteronomy 6:4 is, in light of Deuteronomy 4.
Can you read it? Can you read
verses 12? Okay, give me a second.
Well, you must think I know the Bible by memory. Like you're like,
I'm sorry.
Deuteronomy 6:4 from 12 to this. I wish, I wish I was.
Okay, how about we go to Deuteronomy 4, verses 12. It says,
if you want, you can just quote the idea.
Basically, it says in verse 12 that Yahweh spoke from the midst of the fire. And when you go to verse 33, it says the voice of Yahweh spoke from the midst of the fire. And it says in verse 36.
Wait. What translation is this?
No,
I have the King James, but it's the same in the Hebrew, in the Masoretic text.
He's paraphrasing. He's paraphrasing. That's fine.
Nah, I'm
And
curious.
in verse 36, it says Yahweh spoke from the midst of the fire. So we have three people speaking here. We have in verse 12, it says, Yahweh spoke from the midst of the fire. We see in verse 33, it says, the voice of Yahweh spoke from the midst of the fire. And when you compare Genesis 1:2 with Psalms 29, it equates the voice of Yahweh with the Holy Spirit. So, and you go to verse 36, it says, Yahweh spoke from heaven. So we have three people speaking here. I wonder what your understanding of that passage is in light of Deuteronomy 6:4, where it says Yahweh is Echad, one, but we know Adam and Eve is also considered Echad, one flesh. So how would you, what is your understanding of Deuteronomy 4, verse 12, 33, and 36, which stipulates there's three people speaking?
Well, I mean, it doesn't stipulate that there's three people. It seems that it could be. I mean, I think you could be honest enough to say that it could be one person described by three different adjectives or three different like descriptive terms. That's also a possibility, correct?
The problem with that is that we have a person in the midst of the fire speaking. We have another person speaking from heaven, a different location. And we have another person being qualified as the voice of Yahweh who is speaking. So we have, it's quite clear there's three people here.
Well, not three people, first of all.
One.
Right. There's this notion of God being omnipresent. So God is everywhere. I mean, this is not just a modern notion. It's a biblical notion. It's not, you know, I'm not saying that you're wrong because we're way too open-minded on this show to do that. But I want you to see that the other opinion might also be right, that it could still be one, because like you said, it does call him Echad. Echad could be a complex unity. It's God is clearly complex, and I'm not, or anyone in the show is here trying to put him in a box, at least from my side. But
okay,
what it for sure doesn't say is that it's three different people, and these three different people, you know, become incarnate like become human later on, and in some way like plan the destruction or like the rejuvenation of the world, right? So
I guess you can use it for the Trinity, maybe. You know, if you
Yeah,
want.
so that's what he's getting at. That's what he's getting at. First of all, I'm not against this notion. It's just not one that's clear in the Torah. I mean, yes, the Torah talks about God saying, "Let us make man in our image." Okay, like why does that change anything regarding on how we view God, whether he has partners or not, right? If you want to do that, why should that in any way like modify the way you behave, or like really the way you view the Bible? If God had a partner, why should that change the way you view God?
First of all, I don't believe he's a partner, but part of the same being. But a good question. The reason why I say that is because I believe the Son of God, who was incarnate, Jesus Christ, he is the light of God. And since God is a consuming fire, I believe the Father is like the Son, as per Psalms 84:11. And we cannot have a direct contact with the Father, but he sends his radiance, the light of the light of the Father, who is the Son of God, and he humbles himself and has that interaction with us, as per Psalms 113 verse 6 says, which states, Yahweh humbles himself to see what happens with his creation. And we saw in Genesis 6 that when he says, "Let us see," it means he comes in person. So my point is, it is only through the Son that we can have interaction with the Father, because the direct interaction or contact with the Father would destroy us. So this is the means by which he has interaction with his creation.
So you came to those conclusions because of the New Testament. The New Testament was the glue that put all those ideas together, because from those verses, for sure, you did not end up with that conclusion, right? I mean, you needed the New Testament to see Jesus in the Torah, because if it wasn't the New Testament, there wouldn't be Jesus. There would be a complex unity of God being called by different names, right, but still claiming to be one. Correct?
In light of the New Testament, yes, there's a confirmation of what's written in the Torah and the prophet. I quoted from Psalms 113 verse 6, which says he humbles himself to see what happens with his creation. I went to Genesis 6, which stipulates that when he looks at us, as the prayer,
why does that contradict? Why does that contradict anything I just said? I mean, why can't God humble himself? I mean, why not? And why can't he look at us? I have no problem, and the rabbis in the Talmud had no problem anthropomorphizing God, you know, or saying that God had a shape, or God had eyes, or God had an arm. The Torah says this, but why does that in some way demand that we believe in a later set of books called the New Testament?
As I was establishing, I could establish my point in the Tanakh, which establishes the three persons and the necessary.
Would you have done that if not for the New Testament? Would you on your own have come up with all that if you haven't, if you didn't know about the New Testament? That's I think Asher's question.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much.
You are using those after the New Testament. Would you have discovered the same thing if not for the New Testament? If no one told you about the New Testament?
That's a good point. I want to make it clear that the New Testament came only later on. They were convicted, according to the New Testament, the disciples were convicted by what Jesus revealed in the Old Testament.
Yeah, but they weren't convicted of church doctrine, though. The notion of the Trinity is a much, much later notion. It doesn't even appear in the New Testament. All they understood was Jewish theology. They believed that Jesus was the promised Messiah, and that, there's certain verses here and there where they claim he's divine. Jesus himself will in some way push that away and say, no, it's not true. There's a lot of ambiguous ideas in the New Testament, but church doctrine wasn't part of those ideas in terms of the rapture, in terms of like all these later notions that you use to try to convince Jews that you're right and they're wrong. And I'm not against it. You know, I'm not against you doing that, because I think that's how people learn, because you get us to question our faith, and I think that's a great thing to keep people in the religion long term. But in the same time, that you have to be honest that if you didn't have a New Testament, I don't think you would have came to those conclusions on your own.
I would address that shortly. Just to make it clear, I haven't really quoted the New Testament. Again, the New Testament, I just want to make it clear so you understand. The New Testament only confirms... You
quoted New Testament ideas, and then you justify them by Old Testament statements. In Judaism, we call this almost an asmachta, right? Okay. We create an idea, and then we justify it by verses in the Torah, and then we claim that it comes from the Torah, right? So it's not a new thing, but it...
My point is, I'll make it clear so you understand. It's not an idea that I'm trying to force an interpretation. This is something, if I read page for page, the book of Genesis, the book of Exodus, the book of Deuteronomy, I'm going to come to this conclusion by myself.
Which conclusion? That it's three different people?
Three different persons. I went to Deuteronomy 4, but I could go to Genesis 18, where Yahweh appears next to the tree of Mamre, and then it says in Genesis 19, I think 24, Yahweh made it rain from Yahweh in heaven. So again, when you go to Deuteronomy 4, we see Yahweh speaking from the midst of the fire and Yahweh speaking from heaven. And you have the voice of Yahweh, who is the Holy Spirit, as per Psalms 29.
But why should that affect our theology? I don't understand.
Yeah, what conclusion would you have come to on your own? If you did not know about a Trinity, if you did not know about anything to do with Christianity, what conclusion would you come to on your own by reading that?
If I'm reading Genesis 4, I'm sorry.
You were never introduced to Christianity. What conclusion would you come to on your own based on the inconsistencies or whatever it is that you know?
I would come, if I compared Deuteronomy 4 with Deuteronomy 6, I would have come to the conclusion that there's three persons who are called Yahweh, and there are one, Echad. Because if I take Deuteronomy 6:4 and compare it to Deuteronomy 4, verse 12, 33, and 36.
And what would you do with that? Who are these three? What would you say if you didn't know about the Trinity?
I could say Proverbs 30, verse 5 says that, verse 4, it says, God and his son. Who's the one who ascends or descends? So already there, I could establish that.
Wait. Son. Here, can you read that verse again?
Let me read it for you. Give me a second.
Yeah. Because it doesn't say God or his son.
Who knows the name of God?
Right.
Who knows the name of God and the name of His Son? That's what it says.
No. Can you give me the
I'm
verse?
gonna read it. Proverbs 30, and I'm gonna read 1-4. The words of Agar, the son of Jacob. Okay, we know that. Verse 2. Surely I am more brutish than any man, and have not the understanding of man. I neither learn wisdom, nor have the knowledge of the holy. Who has ascended up to heaven and descended? Who has gathered the winds in his hand in his fist? Who has bound the waters in the garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name and the name of his son?
Correct. Now, what's it saying? It's saying who is like God? Tell me the name of that man or his son, not that who's the name of God or the name of his son. This is why I caught you on the source. This is a common like verse, and everyone could read it. It's Proverbs chapter 3, verse 1-4.
Reading it in Hebrew.
One question is
Proverbs 30.
Proverbs 3 verses 1-4. It makes
30,
it clear,
30.
30 verses 1-4. It establishes the actions that are only attributed to God, and it says who could say His name and the name of His Son. So He's associating His Son as the one.
Well, no, exactly. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. Who can do it? Like, what kind of person can do any of this? No person can do this.
No, he's challenging you to give a name, the name of God and His Son.
How do you know that's referring to God? I'm reading it.
Read it. It's basically establishing the actions that can only be ascribed to God.
All right.
And he's
I'll read it. Here, listen. Okay.
God went to heaven and went down. That could be Moshe.
No. And we have to read the whole thing here. Look.
Rabbi Asher, how are you?
Hi.
I am your friend from Egypt.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Can I please ask the gentleman? Can he end the verse, because he said what is the name of his son? And can he end the verse? Can he read it till the end?
If you can tell, if you know it.
Exactly. So if you already know God and know 100% that He has a son, why would this question be there? If He's talking about God, right?
No, but it says
that makes sense.
It says in the beginning, I am dull and I don't have the wisdom of the sages. Basically, he's saying that I should know this if I had the wisdom. We have the wisdom to understand.
So what happens if it's God speaking and then and the verse 4, he starts speaking about Moses? In other words, and then he's asking you, who went up to heaven and came down, right?
No, but you have to read it. In the beginning, it tells you who's talking. It says the sayings of Agur, son of Jacan, inspired utterance. The man utterance to it, he has
wisdom to understand.
So what happens if it's God speaking and then and the verse 4, he starts speaking about Moses? In other words, and then he's asking you, who went up to heaven and came down, right?
No, but you have to read it. In the beginning, it tells you who's talking. It says the sayings of Agur, son of Jacan, inspired utterance. The man utterance to it. It says, I am weary, God, but I can't prevail. Surely I am only a brute, not a man. I do not have human understanding. I have not learned wisdom, nor have I attained the knowledge of the Holy One. Who has gone up to heaven and come down? Whose hands have gathered up the wind? Who has wrapped up the waters in a cloak? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name and what's the name of his son? Surely you know. It's saying which man has, it's praising God, saying, it's talking about it's saying which man has, it's praising God, saying, it's talking about
That's ridiculous.
The vast difference between man and God, not that God has a son. I know you're convinced of this idea, that by the simple fact that New Testament authors don't use this as a source, why do you assume? Paul could have used this to convince many people that this is what that verse meant, but only you see this way.
I'm just finessing the point. I'm adding the different verses. Yeah, there's different ways to do it, but this is one of the ways. This is just one of the ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are many.
This is just one of the ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are many. There are
Rabbi
many
Asher.
verses the New Testament doesn't quote from.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have. So you're talking about like how can he get here by himself? You know. So I figure I'll share a little bit about somewhere I've got myself as far as like the numbering of God, because people like to do this kind of thing. So I did it myself, you know, just thinking, and it's been a thought I've had for a while. You know, is God one? You know, is God two? Right? Is he not above and below? Is he not the beginning and the end?
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about?
When he created man, did he not create both man and woman? Is he not two? Is he not three? Because it says that he was, he is, and he will be. Is he not four? Because it's all the four ends of the world.
How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
You know, like you can, if you want to attribute numbers to God, you can do it all types of ways.
Yeah,
and this is what paganism. This is what paganism has done.
Tyler, where are you reading from?
Which part? No, I'm just pulling things together.
He's trying to make a point. His point is.
Oh, okay. I thought it's okay. Fine.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of symbolism, poetry, hyperbole, right? I'm not against, from a devotional perspective, people exploring verses of the Bible. The problem is, I don't know how they come to their conclusions that they're adamant that one must believe or God's going to cast them into hell forever, right? That's the problem where you lose me. I have no problem with someone being colorful with scripture. That's fine. But right when you begin to shun people just because we don't accept your interpretation, which is clearly not the literal meaning, that's where you lose me. Because yeah.
I want to make it clear. I don't shun you. I wouldn't have come on your show if I felt.
No, but God, but your God shuns me.
He gives all of us the opportunity to get to know him.
Right. So he shuns
But
us.
here's the thing. Here's the issue. As Job said, who would be an intercessor between me and God? Who would hold my hand and the hand of God? Only through Jesus Christ is this verse fulfilled. Because Job himself stated, who would be able
What
to hold
happens if you didn't know about Jesus? In other words, you're coming to this conclusion after you knew about Jesus. It's very easy to find stuff to prove what you already were told. Would you think of Jesus, or would you know that it's Jesus if no one ever told it to you?
No, as I established, if I didn't have the New Testament, then I wouldn't have known about Jesus. But there wouldn't be. But let me finish. But it wouldn't be a fulfillment of the scriptures. So basically, the New Testament is only there to.
Oh, you got Courtney in there.
It's only there.
I was curious what Courtney said too. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's only there to confirm the verses that I just stipulated with Job. Who said, "Who would be able to hold my hand and hold the hand of God at the same time?" So we can be linked.
So
that could only be accomplished.
Could mean that. Could mean that.
That's the only way.
This is why the Torah is so spectacular, because it doesn't put a religious test on people regarding belief.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, it does.
I mean,
Deuteronomy
wasn't the link between God and Job Satan?
But one question to Asher, Deuteronomy 18 makes it clear that if the one who denounces, who doesn't listen to the voice of the prophet, will be cut off from the people of Israel, and we believe that that prophet is Jesus Christ, because he has his.
Hold on. So, Deuteronomy chapter 18 is talking about the belief in prophets in general, but that belief in prophets is tied to an action. It says that when you begin to emulate the nations of the world, God is going to bring and raise up prophets to bring you back to Torah, right? So that you could begin to act correctly, not to believe in theological ideas that this prophet is going to conjure up. There's no religious test of belief in Scripture. By the simple fact that the Torah doesn't even mention heaven and hell, what would be the test for? Now, the reason we keep commandments is to be allowed to live in the land another year. That's the only reason. That's the only way we know we're pleasing God. right when Israel gets
Are you
exiled.
sure about that?
Well, I mean, is there a verse in Torah that contradicts that idea?
I thought Deuteronomy 5:22 makes it clear that the Ten Commandments are the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant, and the rest of the law, Deuteronomy 31:26, makes the book of the law a witness against you. So here we have a separation between the Ten Commandments and the book of the law, and the book of the law is only there to be a witness against you. And Joshua 24 even establishes that.
Wait. Wait, hold on. I mean, you're going too far. A witness against you for what? Like for heaven and hell, or exile and redemption?
No, a witness against you that you cannot attain righteousness without God saving you. That's why Isaiah 53 is very important.
No, it doesn't say that in the Torah. The Torah never mentions God saving you from anything but exile. Anything. Okay.
Genesis
now,
1.
Wait,
Genesis 1. Genesis 3 about the serpent.
Okay.
About the serpent.
So Genesis is before the Torah was given. The Torah is the constitution of the Jewish people. It's the only key for us on how to be validated by a good God. That you can't quote a story and narrative, the narrative in Genesis, to in some way help us unlock the key on how to please God. God tells you, if you keep my commandments, you'll be blessed, and if you don't, you won't. And you'll eventually be kicked out, and that is what eventually got translated into hell, and remaining in the land got translated into heaven.
Well,
right?
That's why he's taking you back to the garden, Asher.
For sure. It's not applicable.
It is applicable.
They had different commandments. The relationship Adam and Eve had, it's because you're viewing it from a metaphysical perspective. This is why Israel is flesh and blood. They were giving a physical land, right, to keep physical commandments.
So
there is no religious litmus test in the land. Why was there a Sanhedrin for? Made up of people who can't read your mind, right? They were there to adjudicate God's legal, practical precepts. There was never no religious test.
That's because man sinned, and there needed to be mediators or people, elders, someone to help keep people in check. That's why the courts were established.
I think it's interesting that the first commandment that was broken was a dietary law.
Actually, the first commandment that was broken was lack of believing in what God said.
Oh, that's a great chiddush right there.
I mean, that's every commandment. I mean, every commandment has doubt within it, right? I mean, if you break it, or every avera is instilled. Yeah, no, but the point, you would only have a point if it's accompanied with heaven and hell as the consequences. But being that there is no heaven and hell in the 5 books of Moses, but just exile and redemption, then that destroys the whole notion of needing to be saved from a metaphysical perspective.
From your perspective, it does.
From the literal perspective. The literal perspective.
The literal perspective. We're going to do this again.
For sure. It's because that's the only logic is the only thing we can agree on here.
Okay. So where's this book that God has, Asher, that you're going to be blotted out of? Like, we can go round and round on this. Okay. There's one verse that talks about God having a book. Now, we don't know what that means. And there's some some ambiguous, some poetic portions in the Torah that I don't know what they mean. But that is excluded from the literal meaning. I mean, by the simple fact that God says that this metaphysical secret stuff is for him, and that we should only stick to what's been revealed for us and our children to do, means that we're wasting our time. For sure. It's in the Torah. It's been revealed. You're making it into something that's
the meaning hasn't been revealed. The meaning hasn't been The meaning,
you don't like the meaning. See, listen, I've got to keep you consistent. You tell us that we have to be consistent and say, well, the only reason that you know about Jesus or Yeshua or anybody is because it being the Messiah, the salvation, etc., is because that's what the New Testament tells you. You have likewise done the same thing. You've boxed yourself into a theology that where if there is something literal in the Torah, you write it off by two ways. You disregard the narrative, or you say, we don't know what it means. Melchizedek mentioned, we don't know what it means. The blotting out, we don't know what it means. All of these things which build the context up to a Messiah that is the arm of the Lord that brings forth salvation.
Okay.
I like that woman. I don't know who she is, but I suppose.
Of course you do.
Thank you.